All right, welcome back to the channel. So we're in this video, we're going to talk about Deontay Wilder and what he had to say about Canelo Alvarez and Oscar Valdez and their doping. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to talk about Deontay Wilder, Canelo Alvarez, Oscar Valdez, and doping in boxing. Deontay Wilder, if you don't recall, is probably one of the most cheated fighters that we've seen in modern boxing. News comes in and, we pay attention to it for a minute and then, it's on to the next story. But if you go back and look at how many times Deontay Wilder has been involved with a fighter that is either has tested positive for performance enhancing drugs in the past, tested positive for performance enhancing drugs right before he fought him, right? He's probably one of the, and then of course the whole Tyson Fury, with the gloves and all of that stuff that Tyson Fury did in the fight with him. Deontay Wilder is probably one of the most cheated fighters that I know of in boxing, even more so than Conceição, because Conceição, it only happened to he only fought one doped up guy for sure that we knew. Deontay Wilder has fought multiple, but Deontay Wilder was asked about Canelo Alvarez, asked about Oscar Valdez, and he laid out a point of view that I think is very refreshing. And it's just a guy, being very, very honest, man. You can say about Deontay, a lot of things about Deontay Wilder. You can question how good a fighter he is. I don't get how you can really do that, seeing as the guy's an Olympic bronze medalist. He was a heavyweight champion, defended his title 10 times, has knocked out 40 guys, but just for the sake of saying stuff and supporting their guys, there's a whole bunch of people that really rip at Deontay Wilder's skill set, right? Some people don't like what comes out of his mouth as far as politics or, the training that he's doing for this Tyson Fury fight. Yeah, it just goes on and on and on with the type of criticism and things that you'll find people putting on Deontay Wilder. But one thing that you cannot do with Deontay Wilder is you can't call him a liar and you can't call him a cheat. This dude is one of the most honest guys in boxing. If you ask him a question, he's going to give you an honest answer, and he'll give you the honest answer even if it's not a popular one. And for him just to be out there blatantly about Canelo Alvarez and Oscar Valdez, I think is something that is outstanding. And plus, for him to say that he himself would rather lose than cheat, I'm very, very glad to hear that, because, I don't want to say that I'm a boxing purist, but I've been a fan for boxing, pretty much my entire life, fan of Muhammad Ali, all the way through, Mike Tyson, Larry Holmes, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield. I watched pretty much all the Klitschko fights, watched, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. I've seen all of these guys, Lennox Lewis, seen all of these guys fight. And when you see these heavyweights fight, this is the first time, the first era where every time you see these guys fight, you got to wonder if they're cheating. And that was not the case before in boxing, or like the great fighters at middleweight, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas the Hitman Hearns, Hagler, Bernard Hopkins, and these guys. When you saw them get in the ring, you knew, or at least you had some amount of faith that you're actually seeing a fair fight. And one of the, and a guy doesn't have either loaded gloves or the guy's not on steroids. But now, we've gotten to the point where, where the media just absolutely does. They'll be outraged for about 2 seconds, but as soon as the guy, as soon as they move on a couple months, they absolutely positively act, like it never happened. And that's the case with Canelo Alvarez, and I'm telling you, that's going to be the case. That's going to be the case with Oscar Valdez as well. Canelo Alvarez, and again, this is somebody, for me, somebody that looks at I take the long view on boxing, right? I'm not talking about this month or next, or how Canelo Alvarez compares to the guys that he's fighting now. But Canelo Alvarez, as far as his legacy goes, is never, in my book, ever really going to be able to compare himself to the great fighters. To great, even fighters today that have not tested positive, or fighters, before, that were considered great fighters. I don't think Canelo Alvarez is ever going to be fair. It's ever going to be fair to compare Canelo Alvarez to those fighters, because Canelo Alvarez tested positive for performance enhancing drugs. And more than that, it's in my opinion, it is patently obvious that the man is continuing to use steroids, and that's because so many people out of that camp with Oscar Valdez has tested positive. So my hat goes off to Deontay Wilder for saying something, especially when you got guys like the WBC and the boxing media that will not say anything about it. Like, or they'll say something about it for 5 minutes, and then after it, they're going to act like nothing ever happened. So like, for example, with Canelo Alvarez, Canelo Alvarez popped dirty for performance enhancing drugs against Gennady Golovkin, and it was a big to-do about it. There was a lot of people in the press talking about it. The WBC immediately made excuses for him, right? He wound up getting suspended by the state of Nevada, but the WBC immediately started making excuses for him and saying how the Canbuterol, this Canbuterol level was consistent with it being tainted meat, and all of this other nonsense that anybody can say. It may be consistent with tampered meat, but it also may be consistent with microdosing. Why would you give Canelo Alvarez the benefit of the doubt if it wasn't for the money that Canelo Alvarez, was bringing in? Or you look at the Oscar Valdez situation. Oscar Valdez was removed from Ring Magazine's position, because he tested positive for performance enhancing drugs. But Ring Magazine said, but after his fight, he'll be eligible to come right back and get put in the rankings. So, a guy that literally tests positive before a fight, gets to fight, gets no suspension. Ring Magazine plays some, under pressure, I'm sure. And, because everybody's obviously knowing what these guys are doing, gives them some, meaningless, and that's not, I wouldn't even call that a slap on the wrist. It's just some meaningless statement where they're going to take him off of a list for a month or, for 6 months. And right after his next fight, they're going to put him right back on. That's like absolutely no punishment for it. So you compare and that's the thing that bugs me. You have actual problems in boxing. It seems to me that like steroids, you get more publicity on how Deontay Wilder throws his right hand, and then you'll find on Canelo Alvarez testing positive for performance enhancing drugs. Now, I know that it is, in by and large, that it has a lot to do with the money that's involved in fights, but it still doesn't matter. You have one great fighter in Deontay Wilder that has never caught cheating. You never really you don't believe that the dude is a liar. Now, there's a lot of guys that said that he was a crybaby or whatever about, over the cheating allegations that he had with Tyson Fury. But even if you look at that takes courage from Deontay Wilder to point out cheating in Tyson Fury and how his gloves look like he didn't have any padding in his gloves. He talked about how he believes that his water was tainted. All kind of things that people, historians in boxing know have happened throughout all of boxing. Throughout the history of boxing, but very few people ever say anything about it when it happens. Everybody says something about it after it happens. Deontay Wilder actually had the courage to say something about it, when he found out about it, knowing that he was going to get a lot of blowback from the press and fans about it. But I promise you, after Deontay Wilder said that, more people were looking at people's gloves. I think matter of fact, I know Shaquille Foster caught somebody with, trying to get in there with funny gloves. You had Alexander Usyk looking at Dillian White's gloves, and there's been a lot more attention paid to that. I think that the only way that you're going to be able to really solve problems in boxing is if guys like Deontay Wilder and other people stand up and say something about it. Because I was a fan of Canelo Alvarez and think Canelo Alvarez is was a very, very good fighter. I had him as my number one pound for pound fighter in the world. But once, that happens, and then on top of it, nothing happens to him, the WBC actually changes its rules to fit him so that so whatever happened to him again he doesn't even have to avoid tainted meat. Right now, he can just go back and eat whatever it was he claimed he was eating before. But anyway, I don't buy the dog ate my homework, excuses from Canelo Alvarez or Oscar Valdez saying he doesn't know how it gets, got in his system. I think that there should be zero tolerance for it because it's ruining the trust that you have in the sport of boxing. So anyway, my hat goes off to Deontay Wilder for saying something about it. That's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.